got six tips and tricks on pulling a wall. So we're just gonna go just focus on one thing. And I'm going to show you a couple of things that, a couple of methods, different methods that I've seen people use online, and several of them that I've seen my students trying to use, and why they don't work and why some of them work better than others. Okay, so the first one that I've seen, this is what my students do. I see my students do this a lot. They'll open it up, they'll have their clay there, they'll get it wet, and they're going to put their hands right up here on the front, their thumbs in the middle, and they're going to pinch it and try to lift it. And yeah, this works just fine, and I've seen some very professional potters do that. So they just grab a hold of that, their fingers on the outside, and pinch it and lift. The real issue with that is that you can keep on doing that, but you're only ever going to get this tall. Because sooner or later, that's going to get taller than that, and you're not going to be able to do it. The other problem is that you have a tendency to squeeze it with your thumbs rather than just your fingers and lift, okay? So then the interior keeps getting pushed out further every time. So that's a problem, all right? I'm going to show you another problem that my students do, and it has one of the same issues, is that they'll put this whole hand on the outside like this, so that whole hand's going to be on the outside like that. They're going to grab this and they're going to be pushing in like that and lifting up. The whole time they just keep that outside hand on there. Now the problem with that is that this whole hand sitting on the pot like that is going to cause a lot of drag. So every time I do this, it's going to cause a lot of drag. The other problem, again, I'm like this. The other problem is that they're pulling it out and lifting it up. So they're constantly moving the interior that they already formed. They're constantly moving it out further and further and further every time. And eventually what they end up doing when they get this thin enough, because this whole hand is on the outside, is that this creates a bunch of torque on this, and it'll either twist or else it'll rip. So that's a don't do. What I like to do is use my fingertips. However, I'm going to show you the knuckle pull. This works specifically for all my girls that in my classes that have long fingernails. They can make a fist. You're going to want to put this whole knuckle right here, that whole thing right up against the pot. Okay, so it's on there just like that. The whole knuckle up against the pot. This hand's going to go on the inside, and I'm going to put pressure. The pressure is only happening right down there. I'm not putting my knuckle out like this. Putting the knuckle, making a fist and putting the whole knuckle up against the pot. Okay, and the pressure is right down at the tip of my, right at the end of my knuckle. That's where my pressure is getting pushed in. Okay, I'm going to push that in and I'm going to lift that up. So I'm going to show you the method I use the most, which is going to be the finger method. So I'm going to put my hands together like this. I'm going to open them up. I'm going to put them down over there like that. I'm going to let this hand drop so it's more comfortable. I'm going to press in just a little bit and lift up. Now the real question is, how far do you press in? This is where we get into what I call Batwood's wheel throwing rule of thirds. I'm going to explain to you what Batwood's wheel throwing rule of thirds is. Okay? All right, so if this is your pot and you've opened it up and you're ready to do your first pull. You're gonna look at the wall thickness here. You're gonna divide that. You're gonna have to do this visually. You're gonna have to just divide it into thirds. Okay? Then you take and you push in that first third. This is your resistance finger, and you're gonna lift that up like that. What you're gonna end up with is moving all this clay right here up. So that first one's gonna be about like that. Okay? Then you do the same thing. You take this thickness now, and you visually, again, divide it into thirds. So, 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm gonna push in that third. I'm gonna lift that up. And what I've done is I'm always leaving 2/3 of the clay behind. This is guaranteeing me that I don't pull a donut. I don't just accidentally rip the whole top off. Okay, so I'll pull that 2/3 up and I'll get something like that. And then the last one, I'll divide that into thirds again. Push that in, a third, lift that up. And this will give me, typically, well, that's not a very good looking thing. Here, let's fix that up. Typically, that last pull of thirds will give me a 1/4 inch thick wall. So by just dividing it into thirds, I'm always leaving 2/3 behind to make sure I have a steady, stable foundation right there, that I'm not pulling off clay by accident. And then I can pull that up and create my 1/4 inch thick wall. So that's my rule of thirds. And here's how it works. I'm gonna look at that wall, I'm gonna push in, I'm gonna push in about 1/3 of it, and then I'm gonna lift that third up. I'm always leaving 2/3 of that clay behind. Okay, so that's the first pull. Now I'm gonna take this wall thickness, I'm gonna divide that into thirds. I'm gonna push in 1/3 of that, and I'm gonna lift that up. All right, and now, one more time, I got that much right there. I'm gonna push that in 1/3, 1/3 of that, I'm gonna lift that up. Okay, that's just using my fingertips. And those fingertips are directly opposite each other. On my small pots, I'll do them directly opposite. I see a lot of people that talk about, I'm gonna show you, we're gonna dissect this one. Yeah, we're gonna just cut it in half so you can see. Okay. All right, there's my wall right there. It's pretty even. It's still just a little thick down at the bottom compared to the top, but it's a 1/4 inch thick. That would be an acceptable cylinder, all right? There are people that talk about offsetting, so they'll go like this and lift up. And, but when I do this, I simply put them on both sides. I only offset when I'm really throwing large pots, because that helps to kind of push it up rather than to just be pulling it. But these small ones, I'm always just opposite sides like that. My inside hand is resisting pressure, my outside hand is pressing in. So my third tip is going to be slow motions and full rotations, okay? So I'm gonna do the law of thirds again. I'm pressing in about 1/3, I'm gonna lift it up. What I have a lot of students do is they lift up too fast. They wanna move like this. Well, this needs to make one full rotation, and it's really only moving this fast, okay? So if I'm pushing right here, I need to let that go all the way around before I move up. Especially when you're just starting out, you want to go very slow. So I'm going to push in, third, and I'm going to lift up. And I'm going to move very, very slow. Okay? I'm going to get to the top. This is my other thing that I see a lot of students do. They come up here like this, they get up here, they get excited, and they go, and they do that to their top, right there. So often they do that, all right? Don't do that. What I want you to start doing from now on is I want you to come up the pot. When you start getting close to the top, I want you to slow down even more. I want you to get to the top, and I want you to just hold it. Just hold it there at the top, and then I want you to release your hands off. I don't want you to come up and come off. I don't want you to come up here and go out and keep pinching until it comes into a point. That's the other thing that they do. They'll just keep pinching until it comes to a very thin point like that. That's not going to be very good for anything. Not a bowl, not a mug, nothing. That point is useless. Just needs to get mashed back down. So you want to do your pull. You're going to push in a third. You're going to lift it up. You're going to get up to the top. You're going to hold it. So that's my tip number 4, is to just slow down and hold it and then release. One of the problems that a lot of students have is that they tend to, their inside hand, it still tends to put a little pressure. So even though they're putting that pressure on the outside, their inside hand is putting pressure. If their inside hand is putting pressure, they tend to pull it out like that. So one thing that you can do to counteract that is when you go to pull this, purposefully try to bring it inward. Purposefully try to bring it up and in. A lot of times you end up with a full straight cylinder. I'm going to do that one more time with a new fresh piece of clay. All right, I'm going to show you one more thing. This isn't really a tip, it's just a habit of mine, and it's one that I think that some students will really enjoy, but I throw with my sponge. So here's my sponge. I'll put that sponge up against there, so I'm still using my fingertips, but I'm going to put my sponge up there. Now the advantage of doing the sponge throw is that it never loses lubrication. It always stays wet. So it's always like having some water on there. So I don't have to sit there and get it wet again and pull until it dries out, and then get it wet and pull until it dries out. If you concentrate on pulling it inward slightly on each of your pulls, you might end up with something that goes up and in. So what? If it comes up and in, you just put your hand in there and you drag that out until it's straight up. Okay? You can do that really easy with a cylinder. What you can't do is take a bowl that's clear out here and bring it in really easy, because several real problems occur when you do that. Try to pull it upward and inward, and it'll solve that problem of your inside hand putting too much pressure out and creating a bowl shape. Okay? This is tip number 6. When I am almost done, I've done 3 pulls, I often go back for a 4th. This is me. This is typically a good potter will have their mug done in 3 pulls. Okay? Then I got a 1/4 inch thick in 3 pulls. With this one right here, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to put just a little bit of pressure both inside and outside, and I'm going to just thin that out right down at the bottom where things get a little thick. Okay, so that's my tip number 6, is to use just the little bit teeniest pressure both inside and out right at the bottom. Drag that up about, I don't know, about a 1/3 of the way, and then release that pressure and just ride it all the way to the top. Okay, with that, then, that last pull that I just did, this, if I get rid of this stuff right there, when I cut this one should be really quite even. There we are. Very even wall. All right, so I got one more ball of clay here. I'm gonna use this to show you some of the stranger throwing positions with their hands that I've seen. Like I said, I've seen people online using this, and so it's got to be being taught somewhere. Someone's teaching this method, and it's working for people. So who am I to say don't do this? All I can say is I don't do this. Now, I've seen people use the thumb pull on the backside like this, right? I've seen people, this is one that I keep seeing people do. They kind of put their hand right here, and they kind of press in and lift it up like this. Now, the only thing that I can think of when they're doing this is that it feels awkward for me, so I don't know. It works for them. Maybe it's the position that their hand's in. Maybe they put it over here a little bit further. I'm not sure if they're using their fingers. It looks like they're using their whole hand right there and lifting it up like that. Okay? And I've seen several people do that online. And for me, it just seems like putting too much of my hand against the pot. I feel like I'm gonna torque my clay and twist it or something else. So just keep it simple.